Salve deviatores, and welcome back to Let's Translate Phaedrus' Fables. This is where I am translating through a decently sizable selection of fables from the Roman Phaedrus. Here are all of the fables that I have and will be translating through. You may notice this is the second to last one, almost through with the ones that I've wanted to do. I may do others in the future, but for now, the next time will be the end. And this time, I am actually very excited because I have things to talk about. Not necessarily about the fable itself, but about characters that appear within it. Because, I like these guys. Anyways, let's just get into it. Demetrius Rex et Menander Poeta. Demetrius the king and Menander the poet. Demetrius, qui dictus est Phalerius, Athenas occupavit imperio improbo. Demetrius, just nominative singular, so Demetrius, our subject. Qui, relative pronoun, who. Dictus est, perfect passive participle from dico, which means to say. So, if it's passive, it was said. So, who was not really said, but called Phalerios. I guess like Phalerian? Or was it like that? Yeah, I think it's like that. Essentially, this Demetrius was from Phalerum, or Phaleron for the Greeks. Basically a port town nearby Athens. Athenas is the accusative form for Athens. Just like in English, though I don't think people really think about it, because I didn't for a while, Athens is a plural noun for just the city. And it's the same way in Latin and Greek. It would be Athenae is what the city is called. But for us, English speakers, Athens. Occupavit. Occupavit is the third person singular perfect active indicative from occupo, which means to occupy. So occupied. Imperio. Imperio is the dative or ablative form for imperium, which means power. And improbo, the dative or ablative form for masculine or neuter, because it's an adjective, from improbus. Improbus can mean like improper, or just generally wicked or bad. Or even cruel. How about cruel power? So Demetrius, who is called the Phalerian, let's say the Phalerian. No, let's say Phalerian. Occupied, occupavit, Athenas, Athens, imperio probo. Probably ablative of means if I were to guess, with cruel power. I would almost want to say just improper, because, so Demetrius of Phaleron, he was essentially the king of Athens. Well, he was the king of Athens for about a decade in the late 4th, early 3rd century. If you watched my Pyrrhus videos, you'll know that I kind of really like the wars of Alexander the Great's successors, and Demetrius is a part of that. He was installed by the successor called Cassander, who ruled Macedonia and most of Greece, until, dying, and then his sons, then his heir dying soon after, and then his last two sons basically getting each other killed. But he installed Demetrius of Phaleron as the king of Athens, and he turned out to be kind of the closest thing to Plato's ideal philosopher king, because Demetrius was a student of Theophrastus, and Theophrastus was the successor of Aristotle. So Demetrius was a philosopher of sorts. And if you know Menander is a comic poet. He wrote plays, comedic plays. He's one of the most famous ancient Greek comedic playwrights, actually. And Demetrius was said to have written plenty of different works, as well as compiling works. I think this fable was probably written by Phaedrus, partially because Phaedrus's basis for his fables was a collection of Aesop's fables that was compiled by Demetrius. He's a really interesting figure, and I think he's not studied enough, because it's crazy how it's a king ruling Athens, but he's kind of the ideal by Plato's thought as a philosopher king, but also he was kind of hated. We'll see that in the next few lines, but he was hated by the Athenians. So much so that, if I recall correctly, the Athenians kind of turned against philosophy and philosophers for a bit, which is kind of crazy to say, but yeah, he's a very interesting figure, and I would love to talk more about him, but there's not too much else to say, other than, well, there will be a little bit more at the end, just to respond to a couple notes I saw in translations of this fable, because I want to respond to those, because I think I just want to talk a bit about Menander and Demetrius' relationship, considering this is about Demetrius first meeting Menander. Ut mos est vulgi passem et gertatum ruit. Ut can mean one of two things. It is either kind of like, not quite a comparison, but like or as, when the indicative mood follows it. The verb following it is in the indicative mood. But it is a comparison when it is in the subjunctive. Est is indicative. So let's say as mos just means like the custom, habit, or manner, like a manner of behaving. Est is just is, third person singular, present active indicative from the verb sum. Very common. You really need to know that if you want to learn Latin. And vulgi, from vulgus, which means like the common people, the mob, or the public. And it's genitive singular, so it's just one. I think it's being used as like a collective, though. Yeah, actually, this is just used as a singular collective of people. So let's say, like, as is the manner of the common people. Yeah. Possum. I thought this was from possum, but then I was like, oh, wait a second. No, this is not possum. It's possum, which is another adverb. Possum means like everywhere, here and there, going around everywhere, like mindlessly. So let's say just around and et gratatum. Let's say eagerly, earnestly, or even like in competition, but I'm going to say eagerly. Ruit. From ruo, just kind of rushing. It's just the third person singular present or perfect active indicative. Ruit is the form for both tenses. And since est is present, I'm going to go with present here. It could be a historical present. Rushing, ruit, around. Well, no, I wanted to sound more adverbial. And mindlessly is a way to translate it. Mindlessly? I mean, it's the mob, so of course. And then Feliciter Suclamans. Yeah, I don't have anything to really mark there, I don't think. Feliciter is an exclamation meaning like good luck, good tidings, all that sort of stuff. Happy days. Just a positive exclamation, and suclamans is a present participle from suclamo, which means to shout or exclaim, so just shouting. And I would put there, shouting. Actually, yeah, I'm actually going to go happy days. I think that sounds better. Because, I mean, what are they wishing Demetrius good luck for? Because he had already, he's, I think this is already in while he is occupying Athens. So I don't think there would be really any reason for it to be like a good luck. I don't know. I haven't seen anyone else translate it as happy days, so I think I'll just stick with good luck. Ipsi principes elam osculantur qua sunt oppressi. I think it's an infinitive. Manum. Oh wait. Oh. Boop 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 boop. And there. So ipsi principes, ipsi is the nominative masculine plural from ipse. Ipse is just that, like the pronoun that. So plural is those, and principes is the nominative plural from princeps, which means leader. So those leaders, illam, just the feminine accusative form from ille, illa, that osculantur is the third person plural present active indicative from osculor, which means to kiss. Because an osculum is a kiss, which literally means a little mouth, which I find very cute. Qua is the relative pronoun. I think it's ablative feminine relative pronoun, by which sunt, just the plural form of est, and oppressi. I think that is... Oh, no. So. No, I do want that. It's just a word order thing that screwed me up. So oppressi is from oppressus, which is the perfect passive participle from oppremo, which means to oppress or crush. So, by which they are oppressi, oppressed. And manum, which is the accusative singular form from manus. Wait, isn't that a fourth declension noun? Manus means hand, by the way. Yeah, it's fourth declension. I never remember the fourth declension completely, because so many of the forms are just us. But the accusative singular is so hand. So those leaders kiss illam, that manum, hand, since they agree in gender, number, and case, by which qua sunt oppressi. They are oppressed. Now, it's a weird word order thing because usually perfect passive participles, there is no perfect passive form of verbs, so it just uses the participle, and usually the the form of sum comes after the participle. But I think because of the meter here, Phaedrus is having it come first. I don't think I mentioned it in the intro, but all these fables are in verse. Iambic hexameter to be specific. And so authors will do weird things in order to fit the meter. But I'm not worrying about meter at all. I'm just because I'm terrible with it, so I'm just treating it like it's prose. But I assume anything weird that happens, it's probably for the meter. Tacite gementes tristem vicem fortunae. I think there. Yes. Tacite is an adverb. Tacitus, the adjective, means silent or quiet. Taciturnitas, the noun, means silence or quiet. And so tacite is the adverb for silently or quietly. Gementes is the nominative or accusative plural form from gemens, the present participle from gemo, which means to sigh or groan or bemoan. Tristem is the accusative singular form from the adjective tristis, which means sad. Fortunae, the genitive or dative singular forms from fortuna, though it could also be nominative plural, but I don't think it's being that. I think it's genitive singular. And vicem. It is the accusative form from vicis, which could mean a change or turn, or perhaps a twist. Perhaps you could say a sad twist of fate. No. It is a sad... silently bemoaning their sad twist of fate. Sometimes you just gotta insert words into Latin, because Latin uses far fewer words than English to get across the same point. So apparently, the leaders of Athens, they're just kissing up to Demetrius, who is supposedly suppressing them, or oppressing them. Just shouting feliciter to him, and kissing the hand, kissing the ring, while being very upset at the twist of fate. Athens being the strongest city-state in all of Greece, to being subjugated by the Macedonians, and now having a client king in charge of them. Their democracy... Honestly, I'm not sure what the state of their democracy is here. I would need to look into it, because they've got a king, but I've also read that Demetrius kind of strengthened their democracy. I need to look into it more. Because like I said, again, Demetrius is a really interesting character, and his relationship to the Athenians is something that I really want to look into more. I got a book a while back called From Democrats to Kings, and when I found out, it did not actually really talk about Athens during the Hellenistic age, when they got more oligarchic and less democratic over time. I was very disappointed. I think it is just from I think when I read the intro, it was just up to the Hellenistic age. But I could be wrong. I need to read that. And it only really mentions in passing, right at the end, in the last few pages, right before the epilogue, Demetrius of Phalerum and Demetrius the Besieger, who also was kind of proclaimed as king by the Athenians. Or I guess better to be proclaimed as king, for a king to be proclaimed by the people than to be appointed a king by a different king, I guess? I don't know. But I want a book more about Demetrius of Phalerum and Athens. In fact, I probably need to read through again Alexander to Actium by Peter Green, because that's a fantastic, though very dense book. And that's where I really learned about Demetrius of Phalerum the most, so I need to look through that again. Anyways, back to the Latin. Quin, I think, is acting as an adverb here, and then etiam is also an adverb. I think they're just trying to be emphatic. Resides et sequentes otium. Technically. Quin, I'm having trouble pinning down, but I think it's just being emphatic. And moreover. Yeah, it's just trying to push, because now I see the example on Wiktionary, strengthened by various adverbs. Quin etiam, and moreover. And so that's what etiam's doing as well, just trying to amplify the previous statement. Resides is from reses, which is an adjective for like someone that's just staying or motionless, idle. So I guess like the idle, or those idle, and, well, resides, nominative or accusative plural, I should say. And sequentes is from sequens, nominative or accusative plural as well. Present active participle from sequor, which means to follow, so following. Otium, which means rest or leisure. Moreover, I guess I could say they are idle. Maybe it's maybe he just left out an s, well, not est, a sunt there. Ni defuisse noceat repunt ultimi. Ni, I think, is being used in a similar way as ne, with like lest or so that not. Defuisse is the perfect active indicative from desum, which means to be away. To have been absent, I think. And noceat is the third person singular present active subjunctive, so working with ne, from noceo, which means to injure or harm. So I guess it hurts, maybe, so that it does not hurt, because resides and sequentes can't be the subject of noceat, because this is singular. So I think it's just the act of being away, I think. Defuisse, to be absent. So that it does not hurt to be absent. Repunt, the third person plural by the ent. Present active indicative from repo. And repo means to creep or crawl. Just like approaching slowly. Let's say creep. Ultimi from ultimos, which means like the final, the last. Or like, yeah, I guess the last. The last creep up. So what I'm gathering is that this is a gathering of sorts. There's a huge crowd, and people are coming up to Demetrius, shouting "Felicite," and trying to kiss the hand that is oppressing them. And they don't want to be left out, or at least those that, oh, yeah, those idle and following leisure, so that it does not hurt to be absent, the last creep up. So those getting to Demetrius last, they just kind of sneak their way in there, because they're lazy. Inquis Menander nobilis comoides, quas ipsum ignorans legarat Demetrios, et admiratus fuerat ingenium viri. Let's go up to there. So, inquis, in preposition takes the ablative or accusative, but we've got the ablative plural. Yeah, okay. So it's plural because this is one of the ultimi, one of the last people up. So, in which Menander nobilis comoides, dative for ablative plural for nobilis. Oh, because I thought that was nois, because for some reason I thought this was nois, because Menander nowadays, why did I think this would apply here? He is the author of Greek New Comedy, and for some reason I thought that was here too. Hold on, because nobilis is nominative singular, whereas comoides is dative or ablative plural. And actually, why is the punctuation there? Perseus Tufts, I am finding more and more issues with your text. But nobilis means noble or highborn or famous. Noble or, let's say famous, Menander. Actually, I guess, no, Menander. Oh, no. I think this is just a, what's it called? Predicate nominative? Menander, famous from his comedies. Comoides is from comoedia, which means a comedy, the play, the kind of play. So, in which Menander, famous from his comedies, quas, the accusative plural feminine form from qui. Yeah, we saw qua here. This is accusative plural form of that, which, ipsum from ipse, which means himself. Himself, herself, or itself. It's a reflexive pronoun. So himself, ignorans, it's the present participle from ignoro, which means to not know or be ignorant. Or to ignore, like ignoring, but it's not that here. Unknowing. Legarat is the pluperfect, third person singular pluperfect indicative active from lego, which means to read. So had read, and Demetrius, just nominative singular. So Demetrius had read. Honestly, I want to put it which Demetrius himself unknowingly. No, because that's more adverbial. Demetrius himself not knowing had read. Kinda? Oh, that's more awkward. Also, why is it ipsum and not ipse? So then I don't think it could be Demetrius himself. Because Demetrius is masculine, of course. Commedia is feminine, so it can't be the play itself, or the comedy itself. Why is it ipsum? Because it has to be masculine accusative singular, or neuter nominative or accusative singular. Can't really be the matter, because that would imply res, which is also a feminine noun. Oh, maybe it's Demetrius being, or not knowing him, by the ipsum referring to Menander being accusative, because it's technically the object of ignorans, the verbal adjective. Yeah. Not knowing him had read. Et and admiratus fuerat. Admiratus being the perfect passive participle from admiror. But why is it fuerat? Because that's pluperfect. Hold on, let me see. I guess it's just and admiratus, admiror, to admire. So, and he had admired. Ingenium can be either accusative or nominative singular. Has to be accusative here because admiratus is the nominative and can only be the nominative. And that can mean the intelligence or genius, the talent. The, let's say talent, viri, genitive singular from vir, of the man. Unguento delipudus, vestitutu fluens, viniebat gressu delicato et. Actually, no. It is gressu delicato et languido. Unguento is from unguentum, which means an ointment or perfume. I think perfume will make more sense here, or at least will paint a better picture for what's coming up. Delibulus is the perfect passive participle from delibuo, which means to be anointed or besmeared, or even just applied? Not really. Like smeared up, or I'm going to say anointed. And since unguento is dative or ablative, anointed with perfume, comma, vestitu. Vestitu is the ablative form from, so vestitus is the perfect passive participle from vestio, which means clothe or dress. So essentially clothed or dressed. Except no, because it can also just be a noun, which means clothing, apparel. Or I'm going to say garment. Not garment. What did I say before? Let's try dress. Not as in like a dress, but just something fancier. Trying to say it a little bit fancier. And fluens is the present active participle from fluo, which means to flow. So flowing. And flowing with, or I guess in dress, in garment, or in clothing. Because it can't be with flowing clothing, because fluens is a nominative. I think that's the best I got, just flowing in clothing. Let's do that. Basically, he's got perfume on, and long clothes that flow in the wind. Very different from like a manly man in Greece. Well, I guess this is for a Roman audience, so in Rome. Veniebat. This is the third person singular imperfect active indicative from venio, which means to come, or arrive, or even approach. And usually I translate this as come, so it would be he was coming, but let's say approaching. Graesu is the ablative singular of graesus, which means a step. Delicatus means delicate or like soft, delightful, or even effeminate. If you watched the last video, you kind of know what I'm getting at here. And don't worry, it'll be spelled out. Et and languido, the ablative form from languidus, which means weak or slow. Let's say slow. Not necessarily weak, just slow. So he was approaching with a effeminate and slow step. Yeah, sure, an effeminate slow step. Hunc ubi terranus, oh, I don't need to roll my R, terranus vidit extremo agime. Hunc, the accusative singular form from hic, which is a pronoun meaning this. Ubi usually means where, but I think here it means when. Tyrannus means the tyrant. Triant, tyrant. Vidit, the third person singular perfect active indicative from video, which means to see or saw. Extremo from extremus, which means like the extreme or the edge. So let's say the edge. Yeah, edge. And agmine, the ablative singular of agmen, which means like the crowd. So I think this is more ubi, when the tyrant saw this on the edge or on the crowd's edge. I think that's the closest I can get, because we don't say like the edge crowd, it's the edge of the crowd. So sadly I can't keep it like completely like the Latin, but I think this is good enough. Oh wait, and now this is Demetrius speaking. Quis nam genaidos ille in conspectum meum audet venere. Quisne means like who or which or what. Genaidos, oh, I've had a time trying to come up with what I want to translate this as. So genaidos originally referred to like a foreign dancer whose dance really focused on the behind, and usually was a younger boy. So I almost want to translate this as like femboy, but I don't think I don't think my translation really has the tone for that. I think I would need to translate in a very different kind of tone in order to use femboy for genaidos. Maybe when I translate a different work that uses this word, maybe then. Let's just say gay, like that gay. Because I think that's kind of where he's going with it, but... And then ille means that. I think we saw a form, yeah, illam up here. This is just the nominative masculine singular of that pronoun. In means in or into, with the accusative. Conspectum, the accusative form from conspectus, which means sight or presence. Let's say presence. And meum is the accusative from meus, which means my. And let's get the rest of the sentence first. Audet is from audeo, which means to dare. So dares, it's just third person singular present active indicative. And venire is the infinitive form from venio. So to come. So let's say, honestly, I'm having a lot of trouble with that. Mainly, I'm having trouble coming up with the complete thing. Because it's like, you kind of have to do, who is that, the Knidos, sorry, I'm trying to say it, gay. And then you gotta insert that dares to come into my presence. Let's put it to the next line. Actually, I guess that works. You just gotta insert that. Because I was having trouble putting the ille in there, but I think this works. Yeah. But yeah, he sounds very homophobic with this, so I think translating Knidos as gay kind of works. Either that, I mean, technically it works too, but man, I really don't think I've really earned the tone for it. Either that or maybe just bottom. Who's that bottom that dares to come into my presence? And no matter how I translate it, I feel like it's just going to be funny no matter what. I do find this incredibly humorous, to be perfectly honest. Just the whole, who is that gay who dares to come into my presence? Honestly, yeah, I'm keeping it gay. Responderunt is the third person plural perfect active indicative from respondeo, which means respond. And proximi is from proximus. It's an adjective meaning like nearby, or yeah, just nearby. We get proximate from it, or proximity. So those nearby, and that's either genitive singular or nominative plural. So those nearby responded. Hic est Menander, scriptor. Hic, this, est is Menander, scriptor, the writer. And now, hilarity ensues. Mutatus statum. Mutatus is the perfect passive participle from muto, which means to move or change. And statum is an adverb that means immediately. So he immediately changed. Homo inquit fieri non potest formiosior. Homo means man, as in a human. Let's just say a man. Inquit, verb of speaking, just means he said. Fieri, to be made or done. It is either the present passive infinitive from facio or the present active infinitive from fio, because fio is just the passive form from facio. But they're separate words for some reason. Non, not. Potest is able, the third person singular present active indicative from possum, and formosior. Formosior is the comparative form from formosus. Formosus means beautiful or handsome. So formosior must mean more or less handsome or beautiful. So he said, also need the quotation marks for there. A man is not able to be made formosior, more beautiful. Actually, let's keep it like that. Just imagine there's a period there. Actually, I need I do need the quotation mark. So, yeah. As soon as Demetrius learns this is Menander that he's looking at, that he has called a Knidos, he's like, oh, a man cannot be more beautiful. Of course, there's no moral specifically stated because this is the end of the fable, but the moral is pretty clear, where people will have preconceived notions of others, especially when they see them. But then, sometimes at least, once they learn who that is, their preconceived notions kind of mesh with their, like, what they have heard about the person, and then what they see about the person kind of mesh into a new image of that person. So he greatly admired Menander, but then seeing the guy, he was like, oh, who is that? And then once he's told that that's Menander, he's like, oh, he's amazing, even though he was just insulting his looks 2 seconds ago. Quite a humorous story, I must say. But also interesting, because supposedly both Demetrius and Menander were students of Theophrastus. But from what I could find, because I looked at a couple primary sources, one from Strabo and one from Diogenes Laertius, and they never say that they were students together, that Demetrius and Menander were students together under Theophrastus. Because if they were students, then they would have known each other before now, because they would have met before Demetrius was king of Athens. But, which the translation that I linked to here, the translation that I have cited in the description, there's a note saying that Phaedrus seems to have confused Demetrius of Phalerum with Demetrius Poliorcetes, Demetrius the Besieger, which potentially is true, because they were technically both Demetrius the king, but I don't know, I mean, I'm not as learned as the guy who translated this, but I haven't seen anything that would say that Demetrius of Phalerum had not met, or had met Menander before becoming king, other than they were both students of Theophrastus. There is also the Gutenberg translation that I've linked in the description that also notes that there seems to be no good reason for giving Demetrius's rule the title Imperio Improbo, but I think that's just he was put into essentially the monarchy of... He was put into power by Cassander essentially through force and intimidation, rather than being given it by the Athenians. So I think it likely, despite the first translator, who I do not remember the name of, saying that this is probably Demetrius Poliorcetes, I think this is Demetrius of Phalerum that Phaedrus is referring to. But anyways, I think that once I do the full reading, I think if you aren't already sold on this story, that you will be. I don't know how true it is. I haven't found any other source for this story, but it may have just been made up and written by Phaedrus, but I do find it fun. And like I said, Demetrius I find a fascinating character. Menander is super interesting, considering he's so famous throughout the ancient world for his plays. So it was just fun having a story with two different historical figures that I really like, interacting, kinda, plus the comedic gold of that ending. Especially translating it, mainly Cneidos. That's super fun. Trying to figure out exactly how to put it that is tonally works, because it's kind of dim in the beginning when he's describing the reign of Demetrius. But man, if this part isn't hilarious. But yeah, it's interesting. It's fun to try to come up with a good translation that is tonally fits, but still, I don't know, I feel like just anything you're going to put there is just going to be comedy gold for the modern day. Anyways, enough about that. Let's go to the Latin and English reading. Demetrius, qui dictus est Valerius, Athenas occupavit imperio improbo, ut mos est vulgi, passem et gratatem ruit, feliciter succlemans. Ipsi principes illam osculantur, qua sunt oppressi, manum, tacite gementes tristem fortunae vicem. Quin etiam resides et sequentes ortium, ni defuisse noceat, repunt ultimi. Inquis Menander, nobilis comoediis, quas ipsum ignorans legerat Demetrios, et admiratus fuerat ingenium veri, unguento delibutus, vestitu fluens, veniebat gressu delicato et languido. Hunc, ubi tyrannus vidit extremo agmine, quistam Cneidos ille in conspectum meum audet venire. Responderunt proximi, hic est Menander, scriptor, mutato statum, homo inquit fieri non potest formosior. Demetrius, who is called the Phalerian, occupied Athens with cruel power, as is the manner of the common people, rushing mindlessly and eagerly, shouting, "Good luck!" Those leaders kiss that hand by which they are oppressed, silently bemoaning their sad twist of fate. And moreover, those idle and following leisure, so that it does not hurt to be absent, they last creep up. In which Menander, famous from his comedies, which Demetrius, not knowing him, had read, and he had admired the talent of the man, anointed with perfume, flowing in clothing, he was approaching with an effeminate and slow step. When the tyrant saw this on the crowd's edge, "Who is that gay that dares to come into my presence?" Those nearby responded, "This is Menander, the writer." He immediately changed. He said, "A man is not able to be made more beautiful." If you're still listening, then thank you very much for watching. Like I said before, this was a very fun one, mainly because of the inclusion of Demetrius of Phalerum and Menander. I just love talking about people from that time period, especially. Like, the Augustan period, sure, that's cool, but the early Hellenistic age, there are so many really interesting people, especially, during the wars of Alexander's successors. And that would be something that I would love to talk about even more, so I may look for excuses to do that. But also, you may notice that, did I mention this? I'm not sure if I did mention it, but this is the second to last fable. Next time is the final one. It's not something that's super impactful. Well, not really impactful, super heavy. It's another fun one that I find pretty funny, as well as a decent moral. So I hope you tune in for that. Until next time, remember to spay and neuter your pets. Et valete, viatores.